Welcome back to the Mountain Man Medical YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out. In today's video, we're going to talk about the 2 things that you don't do after you apply a tourniquet. Hang out, we're going to get into it next. All right, guys, so bleeding control, top priority. That's what we need to be paying attention to first and foremost in any medical emergency. That's why it's first in the March algorithm. So it's very important. We got to control that bleeding as quick as possible. But after we get that controlled with a tourniquet, there's some things that you might not have considered that could pop up. Here's how we're going to handle that. All right, so there's 2 main reasons why someone might try to remove a tourniquet after they put it in place, right? So the most common ways that I'll see is that 1, they're afraid that that casualty is going to lose their leg if it doesn't get blood flow back to it. There's a rumor out there that if you apply a tourniquet to that limb will have to be amputated. There's no room around it. It will be amputated. And that's not exactly the case. Current research is showing that we have about 2 hours after we apply that tourniquet to get them to the hospital to get that tourniquet removed. So that is the current thought process right now, 2 hours. So as long as you get that casualty to a hospital to get that tourniquet removed within 2 hours, then it shouldn't be that big of a deal. There's case studies of soldiers coming out of Iraq and Afghanistan who have had a tourniquet in place on their limb for up to 6 hours and still being able to save that limb. So we want to make sure that we're not removing the tourniquet because we're worried that they're going to lose that arm or leg. Even if they are, it's still preferable to death. So we want to make sure that we keep that tourniquet in place because that's what's keeping them alive. Now, the second reason why someone might want to remove a tourniquet is because the casualty is complaining that it hurts too badly. This is a very common thing. If you've applied the tourniquet properly, the tourniquet's going to hurt. They have a medical term for it. It's called tourniquet pain. So this is a very common thing that will happen, and pretty often the casualty will be complaining more about the tourniquet than they are about the wound that caused them to need the tourniquet in the first place. So we want to make sure that we are talking the casualty into keeping that tourniquet in place. We need to be reassuring them that this is what's saving their life and that this is important for them to have it in place. So don't let them talk you into loosening the tourniquet. They might say, hey, can you just loosen it a little bit? No, they're just going to bleed out. Maybe a little slower, but they're still going to be bleeding out. And they might not have that much blood left in their body to begin with. They might need every drop of that oxygen-rich blood, running around in their veins. So we don't want to be limiting them on the amount of blood they have. We need to keep that tourniquet in place. Why is it important to leave that tourniquet in place? If you are removing it or loosening it to make it more comfortable for the casualty, you have a risk of that blood pressure rushing down the pipe, the artery, and blowing out that blood clot that we need there to help control the bleeding. And we might not get that bleeding stopped in the future. So we want to make sure that we keep it in place. The other problem with this is that after you've applied a tourniquet, there is a buildup of toxins and waste products that starts to develop in the tissue. So when you release that tourniquet, all of those toxins will flood back into the body and create some problems for our casualty and make things much worse for them. So this is why they need to be transported to a hospital first to have the tourniquet removed with a doctor who's there and ready for that and can take care of that. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. Thanks for hanging out and checking out this video on the 2 things that you don't do after you apply a tourniquet. You don't remove it, you don't loosen it. Leave it in place, let a doctor handle that. If you learned anything, don't forget to hit a like and subscribe. That's a free way to support me here at the channel. If you need a trauma kit, everybody needs a trauma kit. Go pick yourself up one at mountainmanmedical.com. Check out our Yellowstone and Wind River trauma kits. Be ready for whatever the mountain throws at you. I'll catch you guys in the next one.